Well, tech giants are betting big on India as tensions with China remain high, and they're taking advantage of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's state visit this week. Following last night's state dinner, some of those top names within the tech community spending their morning at the White House at a meeting with President Biden as well as Prime Minister Modi. Apple's Tim Cook, Sam Altman from OpenAI, and CEO Lisa Xu, AMD, CEO Microsoft Satya Nadella, and Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai all among the guest list. Joining us now is Axios global tech correspondent Ryan Heath. And Ryan, so much of this conversation has been framed in the context of China, which certainly makes sense, given that a lot of these tech companies are looking to diversify outside of China. But how big is the opportunity in India, really?
It's massive, and it's been going on for a long time. This isn't just a safety net strategy for dealing with the tension in China. So companies like IBM have had between a third and half of their workforce based in India for the last decade now. And obviously, these roots go into very deep territory when you think about the millions of Indian students that have studied at American universities. Many of them return home. So you've got a lot of deep links, a lot of very sophisticated universities and systems that the Indian government already operates. So there's a lot of opportunity for Americans to tap into. There's a lot of talent that the American companies can use either in India or they can import people over to the States. And there really is a lot of opportunity here. And the situation in China means it's all the more important, but there's a very strong foundation to build on.
Ryan, it's Julie here. Let's talk about the potential risks then of operating in India, because accompanying Prime Minister Modi's visit here to the United States has also been discussion of the democratic record there, his human rights record, his record on the freedom of journalists in the country. None of them are particularly stellar. And then you have Jack Dorsey, formerly at Twitter, of course, talking about some curbs on Twitter from the Indian government. So what do these companies really have to keep aware of?
Well, there's a whole suite of issues here. So let's start with some of the tech that the Indian government uses. It doesn't do it with the same guardrails that we would expect in the US or in particular in the European Union. It's very attractive if you're a technologist to say, hey, I get to work with 1 billion biometric records. But if you don't have guardrails in place, that can really blow up in your face or in the face of the people whose records you're in charge of maintaining. Then you've got the democracy situation. So the Indian government did threaten to shut down Twitter. They do demand that accounts that are critical of them be removed or be censored. So you're going to have to tangle with the Indian government. And what sounds nice at a White House state dinner is a lot more uncomfortable when you have those regulators knocking on your door and telling you might be kicked out of the country if you don't comply. So there's that level of difficulty there. Then you've got the situation where most workers in India just really aren't paid what workers in America are paid. That doesn't mean these are bad jobs, but you've got a lot of human rights watchdogs, a lot of people looking through the ESG reports of a given company, and they're going to want to know, are these sweatshops? What are the conditions of all of these workers who are manually labeling this data, the ones that are making AI seem really human? There's a bunch of humans being paid $2 an hour to do that work. So you're going to have to manage a lot of reputational issues if you dive into India. At the same time, the rewards are pretty big if you can pull it off.
Ryan, what about the issue of tech transfers? I mean, this is the Indian government essentially saying, look, we'll welcome you and we'll give you access into our massive market, but we want something in exchange.
Yeah, so this is a pretty standard Indian play, and it seems a bit more reasonable now when you look at these global subsidy races that we've been seeing around chips and around other key strategic critical minerals and other exports in the technology sector. But for a long time, this was India being on the fringe, demanding things that weren't very realistic. And their attitude there is, we've been exploited for centuries by Western powers. It's time to get something back. And what it meant is that India just didn't really sign a lot of free trade deals. They didn't enjoy the economic growth that a more open Chinese economy enjoyed. But now that the US needs India, And the Modi government knows it. They know that India is essential as a hedge against China. They can really push these demands. And they were able to sign deals on military jets, some co-production between GE and Hindustan Aeronautics. They've done a drone deal. They're going to do more in terms of ship repairs, outside the tech sector, but still pretty strategically important. So the Indians are squeezing something out of the Biden administration here. So it's working for them.
How reliable partner do you think India is for the U.S.? I mean, Julie sort of listed off some of the concerns around human rights. There's those who argue, look, India hasn't even condemned Russia for the attack of Ukraine. I mean, there's a lot of question marks where the U.S. and India don't see eye to eye. And yet, if you look at the state visit, the public statements that have come out so far, you'd think they're really on the same page. Are they a reliable partner for the U.S.?
Sometimes you don't get to choose your partners. So I would say that they're not the most reliable partner, but they're the partner that the US has been able to get to the table. So it's absolutely the case that the reason why we haven't seen more weapons sales and other military equipment in the past is because India's relied on Russia for that. The US, frankly, hasn't fully trusted India with intelligence and with some of that technology. They were able to do a civilian nuclear deal under the Bush administration, and there were big hopes around that. And it didn't really work out as well as planned. So if you talk to people in the Bush administration or other defense insiders like I've been in over the last week, they honestly don't fully trust India. At the same time, the only way to build trust is to do some of these deals and inch it forward. So I think when you look in the context of China and the need for as many allies and partners in the region as possible, we have to work with India. I was born in Australia. Australia has to work with India inside this Quad framework as well. So it's a difficult relationship, but they've got to keep trying because the alternative is that you allow China to dominate. And that, in most people's opinion, is the worst outcome.
Axios global tech correspondent Ryan Heath, I appreciate you joining us today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.